Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome to today's episode of the Daily List Report. We've got a really great show for you today, and I know I always say that, but today I really mean it. We've got Kamille Rose coming back on the show. She was on about a week or so ago. She is a peak performance coach, real focus on mindset and psychology, and these are the things that underpin all of the decisions that we make, how we feel every day, the energy levels that we have. It's such an important thing. It's not psychobabble. I'm telling you, this is the real stuff. Kamille is kind enough to have agreed to come on. We're going to do a series of 5 shows. This is going to be awesome. We're going to cover success. That's today. We're going to cover commitment to leadership, masterful communication, how to sort of defeat this overwhelming feelings that we have of stress and staying focused by engaging with clarity. She's a very experienced coach. If any of you need a coach, and she just introduced me to somebody I'm going to have on the show who she does coach, and so I'm telling you, this is someone that you need to reach out to. Let me pull up a couple of things just so you can get some background on her. First is theultimatelyfe.com, Lyfe. All these links are below. You can learn all about her background, these great programs that she has coming. Of course, The Ultimate Life on Instagram as well. Give her a follow there. There's a bunch of great, just inspirational videos and things that we really need to sort of stay aligned and centered and focused on the right things. She's got this master your mindset, right? Lead with clarity, build an epic business and family life. Like, these are such great kind of core values. And of course, she's also on YouTube. So give her a subscribe there or subscription there or whatever you call that, all of that great stuff. So here's what I'm going to do. Without further ado, I'm going to bring her back on the show right now. Kamille, welcome back to the Daily List Report.
Hey, what's up, Randy? Hi, agentpreneurs. So blessed to be back. Excited to be with you guys again.
No, well, we're lucky to have you, Kamille. I appreciate you taking time out of your crazy schedule, especially at the end of the year here, to spend time with us and have, what I think are really just critically important conversations.
Totally agreed. And especially, this is actually a really good time of year to have the conversation because often people are burnt out. They're pretty weary from, I'd say, especially this year. It's been a tough year. And so this is a good time to kind of sit in that reflection. But if you don't really know what to reflect on, it can get overwhelming. But it's a good time to now prep for the year ahead, let go of what was, and then get ready for what's about to come. So
it's
excited.
100% true. Kamille, that made me think of something that I didn't intend to ask you, but I'm going to ask you before I have you reintroduce yourself. This always happens with me. You said something interesting there. You said this is the end of the year. It's a good time to do this. And, I read this book, and now I'm blanking. I think it was Joe Acuna. I think it's called Finish. Anyways, the point is this, right? We have this weird psychology of convenience, right? Where we're like, okay, New Year's resolutions. If you look at the data on marathon runners, they spike when people are 20, 30, 40, 50, right? These sort of nice, tidy things where I'm going to start something and I'm going to start on Monday because that feels like sort of a mental model. But in your background, as part of the Tony Robbins organization or whatever, we're talking massive action, right? You don't wait until January 1st. You don't wait until Monday. You do it right now. Can you just address that for a second? How do you think about that? Or how should people watching be thinking about making these changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So don't wait till Monday.
Yes.
You do not want to train your mind in the same way. I know it sounds weird, but that the way we've trained ourselves sort of in this almost corporate working culture, especially when you're an agentpreneur, because as you all know, you do not have a regular schedule. Y'all are the ones working on a Saturday and Sunday doing open houses while everyone else is usually relaxing watching football at this time. So especially if you're in real estate, the last thing you want to do is follow the exact same Monday through Friday. That's how I think, that's how I act, because as an entrepreneur, especially, you're working 24/7 often. And so an example of this is one of my most successful clients. He is a top real estate coach and realtor and broker owner around the nation. His name is Joshua Smith. And he's a really extreme guy. So when he wants to work on something, he does it immediately. And so whenever I'm coaching him, I'll ask, okay, so when are you starting this? And he's always going to say, I just started Monday. And then I pause for a second. I go, really? And he goes, know what? Forget it. I'm doing it tomorrow morning. Let's go. Because he knows that if we keep training his mind for Monday, it also starts flexing these muscles for procrastination.
Yes.
And what you want to do as an entrepreneur is get very comfortable with the uncomfortable. I'm sure you've heard that. Or if you've ever worked out before, a physical trainer will always push you to do that one extra rep that just stretches you, because that stretch is where the growth happens. So I'm going to encourage each one of you, if you're listening to this right now, is to make that commitment immediately. If you want to do it Monday, then minus 2 or 3 days from that, and then
Yeah.
do it at that point. Get really good at just taking massive action immediately.
I love that. And I think that was something that really changed the way that I thought about how I operate, because I am one of those people who procrastinates. And by the way, how do I say this? It's not always a bad thing. In other words, there are certain
Yeah.
people who do their best work in the crunch, and that's just who I am, right? I do my best work in the fire, right? Like burning to pieces, right? Like right there, it's due. Like that's when I do my best work. So I think part of a lot of this, right, is just about understanding who we are. Anyways, I got sidetracked, Camille. It happens
No,
from time to time. Here's what I
you're good.
want you to do. I want you to spend a minute or two and just reintroduce yourself to everybody. In a few weeks, they're going to know you cold, but for now, I want to make sure everybody knows who Camille Rose is.
I appreciate that, Randy. All right, everybody. Again, my name is Kamille Rose. I'm the founder of The Ultimate Life. That's Lyfe, stands for Live Your Fullest Every Day. And The Ultimate Life is a leadership mindset training company for high achieving entrepreneurs, CEOs, and real estate agents like yourself. I am a peak performance coach. So essentially, what that means is I focus on mindset. And more than mindset, what I'm looking for is to help you create positive behavior change, because there is a science and an art as well to coaching, but making sure that you do the things to actually get you to change your behavior. Because it really doesn't matter if you learn all this information. You've seen this time and time again. You go to seminars, you get pumped up, you're good for like a month, but then nothing really changes. So what I do as a peak performance coach is I go to the root of the issue, which is often mindset. And what stories are you replaying over and over in your mind that are sabotaging your success, which I know we'll talk about today. But how do you overcome that? And it's not an overnight process, but when you do it alongside a coach, a mentor, a mastermind group like Randy and the list report, then that way you're able to actually sustain the change. Because there's a difference between sustainable change and obtainable change. And we talked a little bit about that in the last
We
episode. If you missed
did.
out, check it out. But you want to make sure you create sustainable lifestyle change. And that's where I come in as your
I,
peak performance coach.
I think that's great. And I think that's such an important concept. We see this, and everybody watching right now can relate to that difference between obtainable change and sustainable change. And sustainable change feels like this elusive thing, right?
Yeah,
You know, if you
I
put it in the
know.
context of like diet and exercise, that's probably the easiest thing to relate to, but it's crazy. So, today's topic, we're going to talk about the real keys to success. And we're going to start at the highest level, and then we're going to drill into some really important things here, Camille, right? So the first question is this, right? From your perspective, having coached tons of people and been part of an amazing coaching organization, what is really the key difference? What is the difference between people who are successful and people who are not successful? And I know that we're distilling down a lot here, right? And there's a lot of
Yeah.
factors, but what's the essence? What is the root of this?
And you phrase that question so well, Randy, because this is not me giving you the strategy yet. We'll talk about those things in the next couple of episodes. But the thing you must have more than anything else to be successful is clarity. And that is the one common element that my most successful clients have in common is that they are clear. They're clear on why they are doing what they are doing. Think of it this way. If someone is driving a car, but they're not clear on the destination that they're going to, it's going to be a really rough ride. So you want to get clear first because that's going to then determine the path that you take. And while there are many paths to a particular destination, you can tell the difference between a driver who has no idea where he or she is going and the driver who knows, well, I know I need to get there. If we got to take alternative routes, that's fine, but I know where we need to go.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by clarity. You've got to know where you're going, why you're doing what you're doing. Then you can have the confidence and the determination to get there, even if we've got to take detours.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about the the why behind that destination,
Mm.
right? So at any given time, and there's a lot that goes into goal setting and defining what that destination is, but isn't part of this sort of what fuels me, what drives me to that, right? So for some people, I've interviewed a bunch of people, Camille, who are, this sort of like 5 cents in a dream, right? They immigrated from another country, they had nothing, right? And they were just going to be successful by hook or by crook. That's probably a bad expression because I don't know if that implies that they're doing things illegal. That's not the case, just so we're clear. Terrible
Right.
expression if I used it incorrectly. But but for other people that isn't enough, right? They have to do it for their parents, or they have to do it for their kids, or they have to do it for their spouse, right? Like, let's talk a little bit about sort of people's why and what fuels them towards that destination, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to define what that destination is.
Absolutely. So when you think about these stories of, like you said, 5 cents to a dream, immigrants who've come over with nothing in their pocket and then now they're multimillionaires or billionaires, there's an interesting pattern there of this story of either I will never be in that situation again, I will never allow my family to be in that situation, or somebody has sacrificed so much for me that I'm not going to let their legacy die in vain. There's usually a very emotional attachment to their drive forward. Now, money might seem like a motivator on the surface, but I can guarantee you, if I talk to that person long enough, we will get to the actual story. And often there's a saying that says, your why will make you cry. So, to
Well, that's
some
interesting.
degree,
I've never heard that before, but it makes perfect sense immediately.
yeah, and and I'm not saying that, you got to get super emotional, but until I get to that emotional core, when it kind of gives you that lump in your throat a little bit, or you can feel it in your chest, that's the closest thing to your actual reason for doing something. And the closer an entrepreneur is to that place, the more determined, the clearer they become. But another way to look at this is it doesn't always have to be a sad thing. Your why can also be the thing they call it whatever pisses you off in life, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you're really passionate about. So if the idea of kids going to sleep hungry really bothers you, then that might be a reason that you start that nonprofit, or that you work so hard because you want to be able to donate to that charity or that group. So often I'll ask an entrepreneur when I'm coaching them, if you were not getting paid, who would you volunteer your time to help? And whatever comes out of your mouth in that moment, it's like, well, actually, I've always felt a real call to help veterans, or I really wanted to always help other single dads or single moms in that situation. Those are success clues into your why. The thing you would do even if money wasn't an issue, or if money wasn't coming your way. Because you have to understand that your why is something that pulls you. It's actually quite natural. You're not creating a why. You're looking for what it is. The motivation is what pushes you, right? That's you like, okay, I got to push myself to do this on Friday. I got to push myself to do that. That's motivation. And you have to do that every day because that's not natural. But the why is something you're naturally pulled towards. And so it's really good if you have kids, look at your little kids while they're kind of in between that developmental stage from, 5 to 10. They'll show you what they're actually quite good at. Whether they're builders, painters, talkers, more athletes, but without any interruption, kids are naturally doing their why or their gift. And that's what I'm trying to help most adults figure
Yeah.
out, because no one tells us that when we're young.
So let me ask you a really dumb question. Does everybody have a why?
Absolutely. Well, I would say that aside from extreme cases where somebody might be a sociopath or have really like a mental disorder, where there's a chemical imbalance getting in the way, that would be hard to determine.
Right.
But if you are a normal, functioning, everyday human being that doesn't have that sort of mental or chemical imbalance, there's something that typically pulls you or moves you. And if you want that level of ultimate success, what I call, your God-given gift or the universe-given gift that you're meant to do, it's your job then to hunt for that, to find that, to discover that. Because that's going to be the thing that gets you through the very difficult times. Like, if Randy is really clear on whose life gets impacted when he does this work, whose life gets impacted when he doesn't do this work, why he chooses to wake up every morning, why he would push through something. If he's clear on that, it's going to be much easier for him to get through difficult situations. And so, why is most important in difficulty? Because when times are good, everybody can perform.
So true. So true.
But the difference maker.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Camille. I interrupted you.
I was just saying the difference maker is, the successful person. It's because it's the person who can handle himself in the storm. And the person who handles himself well in the storm is the one who's clear on where he or she is going at the end of the chaos.
So that makes a lot of sense, Camille. So let me ask a follow-up question on that. if you were coaching me, right, and you were asking me, you're trying to uncover my why, and I said, well, it's I'm passionate about this, and it's for this, and it's for this. Can people have multiple whys? Is that okay, or is one why more important than others? Is it when you talk about clarity, part of that is understanding what your why is and what's driving you towards your goals. But can you have multiple whys?
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing that people struggle with the most is they thought I'm supposed to have just one why. I got to find that one thing, but there's so many things that I'm passionate about or that fuel me in different ways, and that's fantastic. You should have different things in your life that are pulling you. Like I love this, I love this, I love this. But if that confuses you more than gives you direction, then I would keep whittling it down to find out, well, what is the common elements amongst all of these things? So for
Mm-hmm.
example, if you say my wife, my kids, my community, my this, notice how all of those might be relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it is having strong relationships with people is my why. Maybe it is helping people to succeed is my why. I love seeing people thrive. I like seeing their family lives change because I help them make more money or whatever the case may be. Or I gave them a new tool so they could be successful, so they could provide for their family because I didn't have that growing up.
Yeah.
So I will say there is always going to be some sort of link somehow to something you experienced when you were younger or that your family experienced. There is usually a healing process that is attached to somebody's why. So, for example, you look at someone like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who he was very clear about his why, especially in his I Have a Dream speech. He had a vision for one day that children of all colors would be able to come together, right? They would never be judged on their race, only on the content of their character. And I imagine as a young black man during that time, he himself experienced a lot of that trauma against him, against his family. So when you're clear on what it is you're looking to heal often in your life, that gives you a clue into what your why is probably going to be.
That's really interesting. It's actually very helpful, and it also makes a lot of sense. So,
Mm.
Kamille, when you talk about meeting somebody, let's say you're meeting a coaching client for the first time, right?
Mhm.
And you have that first conversation. I imagine there's probably a lot of signals, a lot of things that you know in a sense about them, right? When you talk about their clarity and their sort of sense of purpose and their why, maybe they know it, maybe they don't know it. I want to talk a little bit more about this clarity side of success because I want to make sure that
Okay.
people understand how sort of kind of the tip of the spear, if you will, is such an important lead into that success. Underlying that is your why, right? Underlying that is
Mm.
so much stuff. But talk about why clarity is so important. And maybe you can talk a little bit about, for those watching right now, who either think they have clarity but they really don't or don't know how to find clarity. Can you talk a little bit more about that piece? Because I think it's really important.
Okay. So let me start with saying that I talk often about how there are three keys to effective leadership, which eventually lead into your very successful places in life, and that is clarity, conviction, and counsel. So when I say clarity, and that's really what we're covering today, this is about the process of your understanding yourself and your limitations, and also your potential. But typically, I will start with somebody's limitations. So, for example, if I'm meeting a client for the first time, like you mentioned, just in conversation alone, I can tell often how self aware they are, just in the way that they speak about themselves, how they receive information, whether they're defensive or open. And that tells me a lot. So, naturally, and you all, even if you're not a psychologist, just think about this. If you talk to somebody and they seem extremely defensive, very critical, always angry, very shut down, would you say that they're very confident or insecure? What would you think, Brandon?
I
Like if
would
I
think
just
that,
gave you those characters.
oh, and insecure.
Yeah, even if they talked really loud, but they were always in your face,
Oh,
you would just
absolutely.
kind of, right. So it's almost like the opposite because people think, well, if you're confident, right, you should be bold, you should be yelling. But often the most confident person in the room is the one who's the quietest
That's right.
uh, because they have nothing to prove.
That's right.
And the reason they have nothing to prove is because they're very clear on who they are and where they're going. So they don't waste their time, they don't waste their energy on things that have nothing to do with where they are going. So this is another reason clarity is so essential, is because now it makes it easier for you as an agentpreneur to focus on the most important things and
Can we,
focus. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just going to say, just to that point, like, it's an important one, right? Because I think that people conflate confidence with clarity, right? Just to your point. And I'll give you an example. I read a great book. The book is called Quiet. It's by Susan Cain, and it's really about introverts at the end of the day. And one of the things that it talked about is what she called the extrovert ideal, which really came out of the early 1900s, sort of the Andrew Carnegie school of thought, right? And how as a society, we tend to overvalue extroverts. And I'm using extroverts loosely here in the context of this conversation, right? But people who just feel very outgoing and they're very sort of maybe loud or boisterous, right? And has devalued people who are more introverted. And I want to make sure people understand this because I think it's related to this, Kamille. And, you know, here's how far it goes. If you ask people in like a psychology study to describe attributes of extroverts, they're like, handsome, gregarious, you know, whatever. And then they rate introverts and it's like, I don't know. They're terrible words, right? Absolutely terrible, right? And so I think this is important, and I'm belaboring this point, right, because of what you said, which is not to conflate confidence with clarity in the way that you might think of it or in the example that you gave, because clarity does drive confidence, but not in, I think, conventional ways that a lot of people hear that and they think about what confidence means. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And what's so fascinating is that my clients who get the most done and who I've seen actually achieve the most success are introverted, most of them. They have learned to flex extroverted looking muscles, meaning they've learned the art of conversation, they've learned how to be in large groups. But by nature, they're actually introverted people. And I think the reason they execute so well is because they spend so much time in quiet, really analyzing, okay, what are the things that I need to do? You know, my coach, my teacher, whoever, my mentor said this. So they really sit down and process the information, where often extroverts, again, very general sense, will expend a lot of their energy in the performance, right? Whether it's, you know, connecting with folks or energizing a room. And that also has its purpose because they
Absolutely.
give a lot of energy to people. But then because they've expended so much energy, often there's not a lot of energy left for the execution of the task. So I personally am an extrovert by nature, but I became a great coach when I learned to flex my introverted muscles, because great coaching is listening 90% of the time.
And people miss that so much. Yes, it is about listening. I agree.
Right.
So there's another sort of facet of this. I want to get into something just very practical, which is I want to talk a little bit about body language. Now, again, it's very clear to me, and I hope it's clear to all of you that are watching right now, that being aligned at a very fundamental level, understanding your why, right, fundamentally, is going to result in the expression of that is going to drive a lot of positive things around everything that we're talking about. But body language is a really big one, and we've all experienced this, right, Kamille? When you meet somebody like a salesperson, for example, and they don't understand that, they don't have the confidence, and their body language is such that it really sabotages what they're trying to accomplish. So talk a little bit about the role of body language against this grander theme today of success.
Absolutely. So when somebody has clarity, you'll often see it reflected as well in the way that they carry themselves physically. And why this is important is because I would say 80 to 90% of how we communicate is all through body language. We're always reading cues from each other, whether we know it or not. That's why a lot of people, if you ever just, I don't know if you ever do this, my husband and I like to do this. It's going to sound weird, so please don't judge me. But when we're on a date, we
Always.
like to watch, thanks. We like to watch other people's conversations and
Yeah.
almost predict what they are talking about based off of body language. Even if we can't
Interesting.
hear
Yeah.
what they're saying. And a really great study in this, when I was really deep into my psych work, is Dr. Ekman's facial action coding system. So for all my nerds out there, I'm one of them. You can Google FAC, the facial action coding system, and it was a very lengthy psychological study
I'm
done around
familiar
the
with
world.
it. It's fascinating. Talk about it.
It's cool, right?
Yes, it is.
There was
Shocking,
actually a
actually.
show. There was a show that had a short run. I don't know if you remember that, but
No, I
that
don't.
actually followed his work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So describe
And
his work for everybody because it is fascinating.
so essentially, what you do is he was able to break down different muscles in the face that different movements across the world, by the way. So it didn't really matter what region you were from. We as humans have this universal reaction to things. So we will display our emotions all on our face. And because of that, people will then react emotionally to how you're looking. So if I show up on this call today, for example, and I'm like, this the entire time with Randy, over the course of our conversation, Randy's going to just feel like she is really uninterested in this. And you even are just going to be like, why am I listening to her? This is not fun. Even if everything I'm saying is great, but if I just look so sad, it sucks, right? But if I'm like this and I'm happy and I'm excited, you're excited, even if I'm not saying anything.
That's right.
So imagine we're doing this for 20 seconds. How much are you doing this throughout the day? And a great place for you to start, if you're an agentpreneur who's never really studied body language before, is check out the TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. It's called How Language Shapes the Way We Think, or How Body Language
We'll link
Shapes the
that
Way.
below. So link down below for that.
And it's a great study that she did on how our physiology will literally overcome our psychology. So there is what they call the Superman or Superwoman stance. Have you heard of that one, Randy?
Well, it reminds me of Make Your Move, but go on.
Yeah. So let's say you're in a funky state and you're like, I don't want to make any of these calls today. I'm not feeling good. I had a fight with my spouse. Then don't think your way out of it. What I want you to do is literally stand up, put your hands on your hips, and then put your chin up and then kind of look up like you're Superman or Superwoman and hold that for 30 seconds. And what's interesting is they measured how your brain actually starts to think like, oh, Randy's confident. He's getting strong. Like Camille's getting strong, even if nothing's happening. And I know it's going to look silly, but a lot of folks would do this before a big presentation, before a big meeting. If you've ever gone to a Tony Robbins event, he talks about making your move. So it's a physiological move that makes you feel strong, because our psychology is very much attached to our body. So this is one little hack you can do if you're in a really bad mood. Stand up straight, roll your shoulders back, put your chin up. Because if your body is in a depressed state where your shoulders are down, your head's down, you're really small, your brain also thinks you're in danger. So body language is so important for you to feel confident. And then second, it's important for your clients to feel confident in you, right? So your body language then conveys to your client, does he know what he's talking about? Does she know what she's talking about? So simple. I go up into a listing presentation and I'm like, all right, well, I think we could sell this house for, this much. And you're wringing your hands and, your shoulders are down. Even your client's like, I don't think she's very confident in this. Now I'm not confident. But if you're standing there like, you know what? We got this. I know we're going to be able to get it 100K over listing with the way the market is right now. And your hands are open. You're making, really strong movements. Your shoulders are back. So you look strong. These are little things. So I highly recommend doing a little research on your own, but start with the TED Talk on checking your body language. And you could start auditing. Maybe that's something you do at the end of this year is like, yeah, how do I carry my body when I walk in a room? And the last thing I'll drop is be careful with your eyes. So in body language, I used to train with this body language expert for a while, and she would train all the top politicians, leaders around the world. Because if you ever notice, politicians always have certain hand gestures
Yeah,
when they're
the famous Bob Dole one. Yep.
the finger, or they call it the steeple hand. When people speak like this and there's a steeple, often they're conveyed as confident. They know what they're talking about. The introspective, right? If you're crossing your arms, always make sure that your hands are open and they're not hiding, because that indicates to somebody you're hiding something. But notice how one hand out is actually confidence. So it's quite interesting. But I would say with your eyes, be careful where you look when you're speaking to people. Because if you're shifting down, you're looking away, naturally people don't have as much trust in you because you can't make steady eye contact. And so that's a simple one to pay attention to. Now, you don't have to be staring at them because that's awkward.
It's a lot easier on Zoom, right?
Right. But this is all part of building that confidence, that clarity is it's not just a mental game, it's a physical game as well. And so you want to start practicing both because your body language is speaking to your clients just as much as your words are as well.
You said a lot there, Camille, that I agree with. And I want to make one point, like micro soapbox. Okay, so just bear with me for a second, right? Which is, I know more people, I would say, who hear things like this. They hear things like, "Hey, your physiology affects your psychology," and they just don't, for whatever reason, they just don't believe it. They think it's some weird, stupid hack, some trick, some guru technique, or whatever. And I'm telling you, all watching right now, the most successful people that I know, they know that this stuff works. This idea of the Superman pose, right? Or if you've ever been, as you said, to a Tony Robbins event, he has this thing. You come up with your own move, whatever that is. It could be putting your fists out or whatever it is, right? Like, it has such a deep connection to everything, Camille, that you're talking about, which is our energy and our body language and all of that. And I think, one of the things, I don't like giving myself too much credit, but one of the things I get credit for on this show is I try to bring a lot of energy, and I tend to talk with my hands a lot, and I try to be very engaging, and some of these things come naturally to me because I've been doing them for a long time, but it's because underlying all of that are the things that Camille is talking about. So don't push this stuff aside as psychobabble. It actually works. And we're talking about we're talking about science, okay? We're not talking about art. We're not talking about some mystic moon thing, right? We're talking about science, right? This stuff actually works. So do it. Try it because it has such a big impact. And all of the things, Camille, that we've been talking about, right, start at these very fundamental levels. And it can be as easy as a starting point as standing up, doing your Superman pose, making your move, like getting ready for the day. How many movies have we seen where, the protagonist gets in front of the mirror and gives himself a pep talk? Like, that stuff is real. It's not there for nothing. It's there because it works. Okay.
Absolutely.
Soapbox ended.
No, I like the soapbox. And it's a very simple process where people, for example, watch their favorite athletes on TV getting pumped up before getting into the ring, right? You see these boxers, they're going at it right before they get into the ring. They're moving their body, they're hitting their chest, they're slapping their face. You see athletes jumping up and down before they get on the court. You see football players all the time, like pushing each other to ramp each other up after a touchdown, before a big play. And then for some reason, we think, oh, yeah, all this stuff is just baloney.
We don't need
Why
that
are then
stuff. Yeah,
right? But the $1 million, $100 million players that you watch every single Sunday are doing the same thing, and you don't believe it.
that's right.
And so
That's right.
there's a reason these people pay thousands, if not millions of dollars to get trained on how to overcome their psychology so they can perform at such a high level. It's just that for some reason, when we think we're average, we're mediocre, we're like, that works for them, it doesn't work for me. You have the exact same potential inside of you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to that point of athletes, jumping around doing their thing, you can find what works for you, right? The image that came to my mind when you said that, Camille, was Michael Phelps, right? Michael Phelps sitting in his chair with his like warm jacket on, with his headphones on, with this like intense look on his face, right? Like his prep was sort of in his head, and he was probably envisioning, jumping off of the things, whatever they're called, into the water and swimming his thing and doing his things, right? Like that's what he was doing, but he had a different approach to that. So you can find something that works for you, but it's about getting to that right mindset. It's about connecting the physiology with the psychology and putting yourself in a position to attack the day. Which leads me to my last question for today, Camille, if I could, which is, we've talked about a lot of the foundational elements here. I want to talk about sort of the importance of being prepared to go forward with your day, right? That moment when your alarm clock goes off and you've got a bunch of stuff to accomplish, you're a real estate agent, and you've got curveballs that are going to come your way, and some house is going to fall out of escrow for some unknown reason, whatever, right? How do you align and prepare yourself to maximize the day?
So you must have some sort of, you've heard this before, morning routine or morning rhythm. And it's really important that you choose what works for you. Now, there are some people who start with, journaling, workouts, meditation. but you have to choose something that you consistently do every day. And the reason is, and it can be simple, it can just be three things that you always do. For example, with me, I always start with a gratitude text. So I have two accountability groups where first thing you do upon waking up, grab your phone, since people already grab their phones,
They do.
but I text things that I'm extremely grateful for exactly that moment. So I'm telling them, hey, I woke up this morning, I'm so grateful for this, this, and this. And it's my way of training my brain for the abundance and the opportunities instead of, oh man, I got this meeting today, I got this email. So first things first is gratitude. A second, when you go into meditation or prayer, and then the third is the workout. So the easiest way to start your morning rhythm, I call it the 3 Bs. And this is the common elements of all my most successful clients is brain, body, business. That's it. So every day, start with doing one thing for your brain, whether that's reading a chapter from a business book, listening to a podcast like this one, learning a new skill, but do something that's going to enhance your mindset. Maybe there's a self development book you've been reading and you're just going to read 2 or 3 pages, but do something for your mind. So that's your brain. Then do one thing for your body, whether that's a full on workout, going for a walk, yoga, meditation, stretching, physical therapy. But every high performer I work with takes care of their health because you can't.
Everyone.
Yeah, and you don't have to be extreme with it, but you'll see a common thread that you have to take care of the physical body because if you're sick, if you're stressed, if you're tired, you can't perform. I don't care how strong your mindset is. If you're physically sick and you're not taking care of your health, you cannot do great work. So body has to be part of it. Even when you're setting a goal of drinking 8 glasses of water a day, but take care of this piece. And then finally, the business. And when I say business, they work on at least one thing on the business. So there's a difference between in the business and then on the business. So when I say one thing on the business, think of one thing that you're going to do to move it forward. So maybe it's okay, I got to make sure I innovate a new way to reach out to my clients next year because everyone's at home.
All right, well, there you have it. Another, I think, great episode, great conversation with Kamille. Again, we're going to do, this is the first of a 5-part series that we're going to do together. We're going to cover, as we did today, success. We're going to cover commitment to leadership, masterful communication, defeating these overwhelming feelings that we have and stress, and staying focused by engaging with clarity. And so each of these episodes is going to cover, a deep dive on these topics. And I think today's episode was really a great primer, a great start for really defining what the attributes are of successful people. And I think Kamille, as she always does, did a fantastic job of really painting a clear picture of what that is, right? Really deeply understanding our why, the impact of body language and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please click her links below, follow her, subscribe to her, all those good things. Of course, while you're here, do the same for us as well. We would appreciate it very much. And until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy, be happy, and we'll see you soon. Bye.